cooking with gas? We're cooking with gas. All right. We would like to acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands of the Gawler people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Gawler people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Gawler people today. Is Adrian the only one missing? Yes, okay. Do we have an apology for him? No, okay. So I'll scroll down from the minutes of the last meeting. Someone like to move the acceptance of them, please? Di, seconder? Someone seconder? Thank you, Paul. Is there any discussion about the minutes from the last meeting? No discussion. If not, those in favour, please show. Against, carried. We have an item on the agenda, I think our next item. Oh, Helen, did you?
No, I was just voting.
Yeah, good. I've got two screens here. I'm not sure which one to look at. Might look at this one and then I can. Okay, so moving, if we can scroll up. I don't know how to do that. Are there any declarations of interest? I'm getting vertigo. Just wait for a minute. Too many screens are too much happening. We're having a little bit of a hiccup here, folks, technically, so we'll just wait. Okay, no declarations of interest. Any business arising from the minutes? No. All right. We have a report, I think, from Jacinta, so we'll go straight to that officer's recommendation. Thank you, Jacinta.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides the committee with an update specifically on collection management in the last 12 months. It highlights the items that the committee made the recommendations to council that were sent to Art Lab for conservation and they've now been returned. It elaborates a little bit on some of the fines that we've had in the collection. And when I say fines, these items have always been in the collection, but we have a greater understanding of their importance. So that was the Samuel Calvert illustrations. We also recently uncovered a telegram from We've unearthed a telegram from Charles Todd to the Gawler Institute Committee, and we've had some letters as well. It highlights the number of items that were catalogued by the volunteers and staff during the year, and also speaks about a big project we had when we had to temporarily relocate the collection while we dealt with a small mould ingress. So we were absolutely cautious in our approach to that, in that there was, that there might have been an argument that it wasn't necessary to remove the entire collection from the room. We didn't agree with that, so we did remove the entire collection. We project managed that, so it all went back where it was, because we do have a very workable system in place in our storage systems now, and we're looking forward to our new art racking that's coming soon. So the collection was taken out of the room, that was treated, the room was monitored and filtered, the air's filtered, and it's still, we have a continual filter in there now that was acquired, and we use that as, again, as an additional precaution in case some of that mould ingress should come back before it can be treated again. And so that's also a good opportunity to do an audit. So twice a year we have an audit of the collection. We don't go through everything in the collection, we're not resourced to do that, but we pick the objects that are likely to have encountered some atmospheric or animal infestation. So we'll look at our textiles, we'll look at our paper, we'll look at those sorts of objects, and so it was a good opportunity to do that. We found nothing of concern, which is always very pleasing. We're very fortunate. We have fabulous facilities down there. So, but even the best facilities, you still need to be mindful and audit. So this is a update for the committee of collection management for the last 12 months. And is there any specific question?
That western wall, the entirety of it, had moisture when the redevelopment was happening, and the cabinets were placed off the wall to allow the wall to dry out adequately. You've mentioned mould in the storeroom. What about the research centre itself, the western wall?
Through the chair, not that we have not seen any access on the western wall. Where the western wall intersects very slightly, I'm sorry, I'm not very good with my directions. At the other wall, there's a little bit of bloom. It's not mould. It's absolutely not mould, and we check it continually, but it is a bloom of moisture and salt against that wall. There is no items in the collection anywhere near there. There's a barrier between anything in the collection and that space. It's a good solid cupboard barrier. So we are monitoring it, and we've got no concerns, but we are watching that.
You said the mould was in the storeroom. Is that the room next to where the old safe is?
So through the chair, no, it's the storeroom in the lower ground. So the committee will remember when they went back there, and perhaps that's something when the new committee, or when we start a new council, to bring some members down there again. So that's what we call our heritage store. It's, yes, yeah, it's that space, but it's just off the lower ground workroom. And the mould was just a tiny little speck up on the ceiling. So it wasn't a huge issue, but as the committee's aware, mould grows and it has spores that move through the air, which is why we have the filters.
Karen? I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Helen's after you.
Oh, right. Can I speak to that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, look, thank you, Jacinta and your team for this very comprehensive report. I think it really rounds out the work of the committee, but also the collaboration with staff as well. And I think what this shows is the complexity of the collection, the importance, the significance of this collection, and just how more and more things are being discovered that are of incredibly important significance. Yeah, I think that when you first look at something, you think, oh, is that something? And then you get it tested, and yes, it is. And so that really reflects the custodianship over many years of this collection by many, many different people, and the importance of Gawler as a historical depository, I guess, of history. And this is just one aspect of the importance of Gawler. And I really, really appreciate this report. It really, as I said, it rounds out and really completes the work of the committee for this council term. I'm very hopeful that we'll have another committee. I think it's important that we continue this work, yeah, I think this work needs to be continued and supported. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Helen.
Yes, I echo those words. It is really great to visit an overview as well as the rationale and the recommendations. Two tiny things. Well, no, start with a positive. I was actually in the research centre when I was able to see the materials going into acid-free cards and into the inert plastic sleeves, and it is a far superior method of storage. So that's really pleasing to see. The only thing that I think is missing is perhaps in the discussion is we could stress the fact of the research that's been done as part of the collection management, because I think a lot of the materials that you mentioned, Jacinta, have come about because people have, dug into them and been able to do the research. Again, it's part of the process. Now we have a system in place, and we've got people who can actually start to dig deep and find out a bit more about the object. Excuse me. The last comment is, when the recommendations were translated through into the management plan, the action plan. Excuse me. I did find it a bit confusing with the years. I can see that there is a colour indication as to which year the recommendations are going to be, excuse me, undertaken. But I'm wondering if we could have like a yearly list of what's going. So in each year, what we are attempting to deal with. Excuse me. And I understand totally that some of those will have to be very flexible. I'm gonna mute myself while I have a good cough. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Any further discussion? I have something that I'd like to raise, which is concerned me when I read the report, was the fact that mould had appeared, particularly given the amount of money that was paid to do this building up and to prevent that happening. So I've got two questions, and you may not be able to answer it, maybe something for David, but I want to know why it happened at all, and if, as it has happened, is this council insured for things like that?
So through the chair, the exact reason why is a little bit hard to determine. However, we do know that since the building opened, we had a range of air conditioning defects that we literally only rectified about 2 months ago. So we got to the last of our air conditioning defects, and because that heritage store had new air conditioning installed in it, it is a closed up area. You've got new items in there without the proper air reticulation. It became a haven for that kind of mould outbreak. We're hopeful now that all of those air conditioning defects have been resolved, that this won't represent itself, but that's why it's a continual watching brief on that space. So that would be, in my opinion, the contributing factor to why that mould occurred, because the air reticulation wasn't operating as it should until around about 6 months ago.
And is that insured?
Sorry, yes, through the chair. Yes, the collection is insured, and part of that process is part of the collection management that Jacinta's been working on, getting those larger items, portraits, etc., higher value items in our minds actually properly valued so that they can be added to the asset list of council in an appropriate value for money so that the insurance covers the value that they are, rather than just being an estimate, if you like, or a guesstimate, so they actually have an itemised value within the insurance.
Yeah, I did see that in the report. What I'm concerned about is the insurance of making people remove stuff from storage and then making them put it all back. You know, in other words, is council insured against these sorts of things happening structurally in the building?
So through the chair, yes, we do have insurance for those things. In terms of the workers moving things in and out, that comes under the insurance for employees and volunteers, which we're covered by, and our workers' health and safety processes. In terms of building insurance, yes, we certainly have that in place. So I'm quite comfortable in that regard.
Thank you, David. All right, so we have the mayor, it looks like, moving the recommendation. So we need a seconder, please. Di. We'll let Deb do it, seeing she hasn't been here for a while. So Di won't mind. Okay. Those in favour, please show. Okay, carried. Right. Items, there's no items listed for discussion except future meetings and an exhibition update. Now we've got a lovely coloured spread in front of us. Do you want to speak to that for us, Jacinta?
Through the chair, before we speak about the next exhibition, I'd just like to share some exciting news. Last night in Sydney at the Interpretation Australian National Awards for 2022, the Heritage Gallery exhibition behind the scenes was awarded the National Award for the best exhibition in the under 75. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
So if I could just read the judges' comments to the committee, I thought you might like to hear those. So the comments were: love everything about this. It is fun, light-hearted, delightful and joyous, and really has the local community at its heart.
Oh.
Well done. A well-received exhibition that has attracted a lot of community support and visitation. Fantastic items, use of the items in the collection. to communicate and immerse the public in the excitement of theatre, a fantastic concept that seems to arise from a single photo album.
Wow.
Fantastic. You're going to have a big write-up in the Bunyip and do a lot of showing off. I hope so.
Yes, that would be ideal.
Oh, well done. Well done, everybody. That's fantastic. The National Trust will be interested too, and all the other people, the lady that lent the costumes, Violet. Yeah, fantastic. All right, you're on.
So thank you. Now, Richard has sent this through this afternoon. So this is very preliminary. So obviously he's looking for feedback. And one of the thoughts that he had as an overriding theme was how integral communication is to the heart of the family and the community home. And that's why he's got a living room as a part of a concept, because the telegraph was delivered to people's home, mail came to people's home, the phone became a very important part. And those of us who remember phone tables and single points and all of that sort of thing, part of the family home. So part of his ideas were taking this technology and the people who provide it. So he's very keen on stories from people who worked in these industries and that connection between those people who provide that service and where that service went and the importance of that service. He's looking at, we have a telephone box that's a local Gawler person has, and he'd like to put that, and obviously this is open to negotiation and I'll need a lot of permission, but he'd like to put that out at the bottom of the stairs in the cafe space. And string up a telegraph or telephone wire around the building. So creative people get very creative. Work health and safety people say no. So these are preliminary, but he likes that idea of bringing the exhibition right as much through the building as he will be allowed to. So again, this is an opportunity for the community to give some feedback, and you may like to take that away and think about it. And we will be communicating via email. Once council, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I've just noticed the woman with the apron in the kitchen, and I'm just wondering if we can get a better photograph that she doesn't wear an apron and she's not in the kitchen. Well, not necessarily. So yeah, you know, if we're focusing on the 50s, if that's the era. Well, if I can explain why before, if I can finish what I'm saying. Yeah. Look, it's so stereotypical, and I think we can do better. I think we can get a different photograph. Yes, you can have a woman, you can have a man, you can have whatever, but please, can we not have a woman in the kitchen with an apron on? I just think it is 2022, it'll be 2023. Yes, it's 1950s, but you know, do we really have to do the stereotypical woman? I just think we can do better than that. And I appreciate that people have different views, but, you know, women have moved on, and we need to have good, strong role models. And I just think we can do better. There has to be a better photograph than that. I know my mother worked in the, she worked all her life, and she was born in 1931. So she was in her 20s when she was in the 50s. And the women were doing different things in the 50s, with all due respect. And it is really stereotypical. And I think we can have a different photograph. Just that's something that I feel really strongly about.
I see where you're coming from, but I still disagree. This is very much my mother in the 50s with the children cooking. She would have an apron on if the children were cooking. And it is history. We are doing history. It's not, I understand where you're coming from. And today we have to portray women differently. But if you take them back to the 50s, this is what it was like. So,
Could we balance it with a equally stereotypical male?
One at a time, thank you. Helen, you can, and then Paul.
Well, I agree with the mayor. I'm just wondering whether we could balance it with an equally stereotypical of a male who's also doing things that today would be unusual or not the norm.
Paul?
I actually agree with Di. I just hark back to the television series In Time for Dinner, the Annabelle Crabb series. And in fact, that just had the periods right through. And that would have been what was typical in, on the episode for 50s, that's what that would have been. I remember it, that's what it was. So
Anyone else?
I know what you're saying, but I mean, this is what it is. This is.
No, I think, if I may, it's what the media presents back to us, Paul, of what women in the 50s. My mother was teaching full time in the 50s. She wasn't that person either. So we do need to be mindful of what it is the media presents to us, and not to necessarily look for some additional or alternative images as well, because there were lots of women who weren't doing that at that time.
Deborah?
I can see both sides of this argument or discussion. Sorry. I think if we come up with a couple of different ideas, I think another one is also the idea behind that. For a while there, not everyone had a telephone in that period, and it became the community phone, not just the home phone. And to somehow incorporate that in there, where people would, and often in those situations, they were in the hallway, those phones, because you'd be knocking on the door and you'd be saying, who's in the phone? And just in the hallway, and in the hallway, you got more privacy. So just, I think a little bit of variation and diversity. Yeah.
Di?
I agree with that. Our family was the only house in the street with a telephone, and the people used to come in all the time. Also, Karen, in all due respect, my family is 10 years older than probably your family. So, my mum didn't start working until the 60s, but in the 50s, this was definitely our household, definitely.
If I could put my 2 pence in, I've just had, when I had a chance to glance through this, it's very male dominated. The photographs. There's photographs of women telephonists, and I think that's about it, apart from the lady in the apron. So my 2 pence would be for, is it Richard we're talking to? That he looks at the balance of gender and how it's represented in this exhibition, bearing in mind that a number of committee members have shown some concern about the representation in that, but others have said that they think it reflects the reality of the 50s. Not my reality, I have to say, or Karen's mum's, but certainly the reality of a vast majority of women, sadly. So I just think Richard needs to take on board both sides of this discussion in the context of it being at present very representative of men in terms of the pictorial aspect of it. How do people feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. On the other matter, I love the idea of the exhibition moving out into the cafe. I really think expanding the space by putting things into other parts of the building is a really clever and innovative idea. So let's keep our fingers crossed that that can be achieved.
Paul?
Just on the Aboriginal communications, you've got smoke, but then you've got, next one is a rock carving. Did the Aboriginal people actually do that? Is that yeah.
Through the chair, this is just a very first draft. We will engage, hopefully, our Ghana representative, and they will be deciding what parts of their story and their communication they'd like to be placed in this exhibition.
Good.
Anything else that anyone wants to add? No? Okay. Oh, Di? Yeah.
Is there a section in there for, if you've got a writing section at the beginning, envelopes? I'd just like to say something. A while ago, my granddaughter, who's nearly 18, was visiting me, and I went out to the letterbox and I said to her, "Oh, nobody loves me today." She didn't know what that meant, so I explained to her that people used to communicate by letter. So she went home, and unbeknownst to me, she wrote me a letter, which unfortunately her mother told her the wrong address, so I never received it. It wasn't until several months later, and she said, "Did you get that letter from Abby?" No, I didn't. So she sent it to the wrong house number, and they either didn't get it or they didn't keep it, but they told me they didn't get it. And my daughter said she had no idea how to address an envelope, and because she didn't know how, she didn't put a return address on it because she didn't know. She said she went through about 10 envelopes before, and they just don't teach it at school anymore. That was a whole lesson for us to learn how to address an envelope. So I found that to be really interesting.
Thank you, Di. Deb.
That just gave me the idea that maybe the old red post box in the exhibition would be a great idea, and you could have an interactive thing where kids could write a letter and post it. Yeah.
With directions how to address an envelope, which I used to teach. Well, it'd be nice if we could answer some of them, actually. I'm happy to volunteer to do that, if children write letters.
So through the chair, we are searching for a pillar box. They are rare and they're worth about $5,000 each, apparently. So we all missed an opportunity to pick one of those up. But we are actually having some discussions with the Gawler Post Office about how they might be involved, potentially just on special days or things like that. But yes, we're very fortunate. There are a number of very learned community members in this space and passionate and willing to share their time and expertise with us. And they're creating some fantastic networking opportunities to make this, it's broader with the connections then. And as this committee has always said, you know, build it and they will come is Helen's catchphrase. But what we're finding from a staff perspective is that more and more people are introducing themselves to us and their passions, their personal collections, their areas of interest in the people they know. And so we are building that, which then can help us when we are always highlighting the Gawler Heritage Collection, but bringing other things into it that can tell the whole story for the community.
It's almost too big, isn't it? I mean, you think of stamp collections, I mean, it's exponential, this exhibition. Okay, is there anything else that anyone wants to?
Yes, please. Yes,
Yes,
please. I was just saying that each exhibition does have greater community involvement. If we think back to the first one, which was driven more by the designer, and now what we're finding is that, you know, that there is more community input, exactly as Jacinta said. So I think that's something we should acknowledge and congratulate ourselves on. And my second question is there a timeline, please, to get back with some feedback? I mean, I'm going to need some time to really look at these plans. So Jacinta, is the timeline?
Through the chair, if the committee could get back to me in a couple of weeks, that would be helpful. We are starting to write some text. And again, that informs Richard's design. So if we remember from last time, there's quite a bit of email back and forth, and there will be more email back and forth potentially going forward for the next couple of months. But yeah, so we will be a couple of weeks for this would be helpful, and then we will start to send out some other ideas that are more detail orientated for feedback, and we'll keep moving that way.
Thank you. Apropos of the letterbox, if the Gawler Post Office can't loan you one, they wouldn't be that hard to make one of those little.
So through the chair, the National Trust, the fabulous Gawler National Trust, actually have a pillar box one. We were hoping for an earlier one because there's some quite important stories about Gawler's adoption of early technology in post. For instance, they had a post box that had a gas lamp on top of it. Unfortunately, the mail caught fire one day, but so yeah, we do have a fallback plan for the post box. We're just hoping to get one that was a little earlier and that we know was placed in Gawler. But these things always evolve, and I think as conversations happen and things go out to the community, we just never know what's going to come up. I had no idea somebody had a telephone box in their backyard in Churchill, but they do. And they're happy to loan it to us if we clean the spiders out.
Fair enough. Deb,
Just a couple of things. One was the idea of the maybe kind of giving them more of a sense of how long the mail took, how because the kids these days, it's instant. So giving them a sense of a letter, if you send a letter from England to Australia or whatever, and it would take you, giving them that sense too, I think somehow in the exhibition. And the other thing is, I do know someone who actually makes fiberglass Daleks who might be able to make a fiberglass post box.
a similar shape. Anyone else that wants to add to the discussion? I've got some actual aerograms, blue aerograms at home, addressed to me, of course. So, if you want to have some of them, I'm happy to loan them. And they're interesting because they're part of a collection in the National Archives in Canberra. They were sent to me by a journalist friend when I was living in England in 1975. And he just describes what's happening in politics and the environment in Australia at the time, which is why that collection is now in the National Archive. Deborah.
One more thing, postcards, the idea of, people communicating on travel in postcards and their responses, and because we don't see those anymore either, and it'd be kind of fun to have a little section on that, maybe.
I do have a set of Gawler postcards too, if you're Beha made years ago, Gawler lace and stuff. Any other discussion that anyone would like to raise? If not, we've had it moved and seconded by Deb. Those in favour, please show. Against, carried. Thank you, everyone. Right. Theme for next year's History Month.
So through the chair, the History Trust hasn't announced a theme yet. And once we have a new elected member body, I'm hopeful that we will be convening the History Network, and we'll have our discussion then amongst the group about what we feel would be a suitable theme for Gawler, and we will hopefully, as we have done in the past, work very constructively together to put on an entire month of fabulous events across all of the heritage organisations in Gawler. I know that the Anglican Club are celebrating their 100th birthday next year. And so they have indicated that they would like to be involved in much the same way that a couple of the churches were involved this year. So there's potential for broader groups.
I just wonder if the Great Fisherman was part of the Anglican Church.
Angling.
Very nice. Next year is, I think, the Bunyip's 160th birthday, and they're planning quite a substantial. I think they're working with you around some old Bunyips, but that's another wonderful opportunity. So. Yeah.
Could I suggest that in the publicity for this wonderful award that the exhibition won, we also mention that there will be an upcoming meeting, and should any organisations be interested, they could lodge their interest. Even if we don't know the date, we somehow publicise that the planning will be going ahead shortly.
Through the chair, if we wouldn't mind, I'd like to keep them separate. And the reason I'd like to do that is because I also think we should have hopefully an article in the Bunyip about the upcoming exhibition and what items the community might have that would be relevant. But I think there's multiple opportunities to connect with different parts of the community in our heritage space, and having more than one article in the Bunyip does that. So I think,
Okay.
yeah, it might be easier to separate them. And I think the fact that the award was won for a second time, there's a lot of people involved in those awards, a lot of community, there's our volunteer team, but there are other people who lent items who are
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. And this is our real opportunity to highlight the breadth of community members who are involved in that exhibition.
Fair enough. Take your advice. Thank you.
Right, okay, well, we'll move on to questions without notice. Any questions without notice? No? I'll close the meeting. And thank you all for your attendance. Now, in terms of the next meeting, we may very well have one in December. I don't think we should discount that. So just be alerted to the fact that that's a possibility, and you'll be informed, I'm assuming, if it is going to be. Is that right?
So through the chair, December wouldn't happen just to the time frame between council making a decision on committee structures, etc., and the timing of the agenda needing to go out for a committee meeting. It's extremely tight. The council won't be considering those items until the 29th of November, putting it less than about a week away for the scheduled committee meeting. So we need to wait for that to occur. And then we don't have a January, so the first would be a February, from my understanding.
I have a concern that that's makes it very difficult for people like Jacinta and her team. I'm just wondering if we could have a meeting in December, irrespective. I mean, is that going to be a problem?
No, not at all. We can call a meeting on a different day and time, but we need to see whether the new council has this committee as part of its structure. And that we don't know until the 29th of November.
Yeah, but it will be important, given the exhibition coming up, that we meet beforehand, before that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm on about. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. So how can we resolve this?
Unfortunately, we can't. We need to wait for council to make its decision on the 29th of November. And as soon as the decision on committee structures is made, then we can look to convene a meeting if the committee is still in existence.
We're finished, Helen.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your holiday and